How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.
My name is Jonathan Gillum. And this is The Experts.
This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Well, I think I'm going to do the whole show with this voice today. If Sam Nurnberg had taken melatonin and Ambien along with his other narcotics, he probably would have been like this on CNN yesterday. When he was talking to Aaron Burnett, he probably would have fell asleep.
Alright, enough of that. I don't know if you heard what I was saying there, but if Sam Nunberg had taken Ambien and melatonin while he was doing these interviews yesterday, he probably would have sounded like that. Anyway, I got a lot to talk about. Figured I'd have a little fun there at the beginning. So, I am going to go where most people are not going for some strange reason. I'll explain that. Let's get started with the warning.
With the warning order.
You know, I wonder if I had a network show, would they allow me to do this stuff on there? I don't know. I could always do the David Robinson voice as well.
My name is David Robinson, and welcome to the experts.
So anyway, yes, I'm totally sober. I'm not Nunberging it. But listen, I want to talk today. I was on David Webb's show. It was kind of fun this morning. I got to kind of co-host with old David Webb today on his show. I got no sleep. I never get any sleep anymore, folks. And you can see it in my eyes. I get no sleep, and because I'm trying to write some more stuff here, and so I don't get any sleep. By the time I fall asleep, I start getting phone calls. And everybody that I call, because I'm a late night person, so I text and call everybody the day before when they're already probably halfway asleep. And then they all call me early in the morning when they get up. And so it's like at 6 o'clock in the morning, I start getting phone calls from the people that I was texting last night. So anyway, I got called to come up there and help out with David's show today, and it was a great time. But there was a story that we talked about today. And it's about the Clintons and something that I never knew that they had. I mean, I knew they had other charitable organizations. I mean, a lot of people, these big money people, normally just sit on boards of charitable organizations, but the Clintons go out and create all these things. And all of them have the same complaints over and over again, that there's shady practices in the budget and in the accountability of the money flow. By the way, if you've not shared this, share it on Facebook, retweet it on Twitter. I have a feeling Facebook is playing terrible games, which I'm going to say something here in a minute about something Facebook is doing. But Facebook plays terrible games with the numbers. I explain this nightly. You know, we've gotten to where we have between 5,000 and 10,000 views every night on the show, yet our reach is like less than that. How is that possible? How is it possible that the reach is less than the views? So they're definitely playing games with us, you little Twitter, you Facebook trolls, and Twitter probably, and we know YouTube does it. But all you techie leftist trolls, and if you're just liberals, you need to wise up. And this is kind of what I want to talk about tonight, is the fact that, you know, you follow stuff that is just it's unexplainable. You follow people and you follow narratives that you don't even question. You don't even question these things. And I could preach this over and over again. This show is not just it's not just for conservatives. Anybody that watches this show on a regular basis will tell you I don't like the terms conservative and liberal. I like, in fact, what I like is, effective thinkers and solutions. I don't like to have anybody tell me a narrative that has nothing to do, like, in other words, I say, oh, I'm following everything that they say before we even get what the problems are. I've been looking at all, the past couple of weeks, I've been looking at lots of different things that people follow blindly. One of the things I find very interesting about the left, and again, I don't want you to think I'm busting on the left. I'm trying to enlighten you where you can see this is the difference of this show. I'm talking to everybody, and I want you all to understand that some of the stuff that you follow blindly is you must realize that it makes no sense when you look at these and the things that you say and the things that you do. When we look at, for instance, the Second Amendment is always played out by everybody in media and all these activists, and then we get into this gun control nonsense. And the reality is, if you just read the Second Amendment, I don't think there's really much interpretation. There's no interpretation that has to go along there. It says, and I know you all have read this a million times. Some of you have. Some of you have never read it. A well-regulated militia. Okay, let me start again. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now let's go back over that again. See, this is I'm trying to get people that follow blindly ideologies to understand that if they want to live in a free country, in a free society, you have to take ownership of your Constitution, of your citizenship, of your freedom. You have to serve it. You have to uphold it, and you have to understand it. The Second Amendment and these arguments that people have, and they always say the Founding Fathers didn't expect you to have, AR-15s, fully semi-automatic. That's one of the terms they use on some CNN. Full semi-automatic weapons. I don't know what that is. I don't think they've read the Second Amendment. They say, they just intend you for hunting and for protection, but they didn't intend, this whole thing about a tyrannical government is just nonsense. They actually believe this stuff because they don't understand the history, not only that the Founding Fathers faced, but the entire history of the world. It's not like modern day human beings have changed. We have not changed at all. It's very similar to when you see a poor person, a redneck, or somebody from the hood win the lottery. Average is 2 years. They're bankrupt within 2 years. Even if they win $100 million within 2 years, they're going to be bankrupt on average. Why is that? You've always heard the saying, you can take the person out of the woods, but you can't take the woods out of the person, or you can take the person out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the person. If you just give somebody a bunch of money and they've never earned any money, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to earn that money. But if they've never worked hard, and if they don't understand, or if they just have never been around and they don't understand money, maybe they've never had money, or if they don't have somebody teach them about the money before they take it on board, they're going to get hit with a life that is they were not expecting. So the Second Amendment is the same way, and so is the Constitution in general. If you look at the Second Amendment, as I just read it, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, if you look at that the way it's really written, not the way people interpret it, because they haven't studied the Founding Fathers in history, just like lottery winners that don't study money before they get handed millions of dollars will lose it. The people that don't study history will not understand what they're meaning in the Second Amendment. And they'll be apt to follow people that have their own agendas and their own interpretation that is skewed. A well-regulated militia. I'm going to kind of put it into my own words, but so you can kind of get where I'm coming at here, without it being interpreted. A well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of the free people, of freedom, of defense of this country against tyrannical government. If it wasn't talking about a tyrannical government, it wouldn't say a free state. It would just say a regulated militia being necessary to keep people safe. But this says a well-regulated militia is necessary for the security of a free state. That's all that's saying. And as such, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Why shall it not be infringed? Because the security of a free state is dependent on a well-regulated militia. And what is a well-regulated militia? It's the people. It's not something you go up and sign up for. It's the people. Something that will stand against a tyrannical state. It's really that simple. In those days, in that day and age, the militia was just the people. It wasn't like they went through training. The majority of people that served in the Civil War and in the Revolutionary War and all these other wars, they went through very little training. Most of them knew how to shoot because they were taught to shoot. They were taught weapon safety and weapons handling. And so a well-regulated militia is simply the citizenry. It's not saying that a well-regulated military is necessary and people have to sign up for it and go through boot camp in order to maintain safety. That's not what they're saying. But people turn this into something that it's just not. They turn it into something that it's not. And the same thing goes for when we talk about abortion, for instance. I don't know why we've made abortion into a religious issue, because you're going to lose it as soon as you do that. It should simply be, I mean, is it a religious issue? Sure, it's a religious issue because people don't want to commit murder. So what's interesting is murder is against the law. And then when you also look at the Fifth Amendment, for instance, I mean, this is repeated over in several different amendments, but in the Fifth Amendment, it says, that no one shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life. Could you stop right there? Liberty or property. Most people that don't know the Constitution think that that comes from the Declaration of Independence. They confuse the Declaration of Independence with the Constitution. And they think life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is in the Constitution. Life, liberty, and property, that's in the Fifth Amendment. And then when we go down to, let me find this again here. Stand by one second. Well, it's repeated in here again. And it talks about life. I should have written this down today. So, wherever you see in the Constitution where it talks about life, and that life shall be life, liberty, and property, for instance, in the Fifth Amendment, shall not be infringed upon, how is it that if we haven't defined where life starts, well, let me put it this way. If you try to go in someone's life, the only way that can happen legally is if the court says so, legally. But yet, in order to, we can determine that this person has done this wrong, and so their punishment is end of life on earth. So when we look at the beginning of life, no scientist can tell us where it starts. But yet we make decisions to take life away from someone when they have no voice in the matter. Anyway, the point of all this, I mean, I could sit here and think, I'm perplexed by these things of how I see written into the script of movies and things where they're talking about some girl, how she's tough. I saw this in something passing on Netflix, how she's a rebel, she's tough. You know, she's had so many abortions, she doesn't even count them anymore, as though that was something that she should be proud of. When we look at the Constitution and we look how people interpret it, it's very similar to when we look at all the other problems that are caused by people leaning to the left or leaning to the right. If you looked at for the effective solutions, if you looked at reality, if you looked at not trying to interpret things based on your ideology, but rather what is real, you would see that a lot of these problems that we have are actually caused by politicians and narcissists in media and psychopaths in leadership positions confusing the people. And the masses, as my philosophy teacher used to talk about when I was in college, that the masses are just like zombies. The only difference is zombies walk with their arms straight out. The masses are so easily swayed. And once you commit to an ideology, I mean, folks, you're done. An ideology, a political ideology, is nothing that you should ever commit yourself to. we should stand by that. If I don't care if it's the most conservative person or a liberal person that just fits your needs. If they don't have the answers, you should not follow them, regardless of what party they're in. Or if they do have the answers, like Trump has got a lot of answers that liberals say, I guess, he's done. Well, okay, you don't have to say, I guess. He's done those things right. Get behind him on them. I know he's done some things wrong, and I call him out on it. It's as simple as that. But we don't do that. We don't do that. And so what happens is we end up seeing people like the Clintons in a light that is not true. We end up seeing the Clintons on a pedestal. I was watching Tucker Carlson today. He was doing a great job, but he was talking about the ruling elite. And the ruling elite, there shouldn't be any such thing in this country. The reality of the ruling elite, what that is a bunch of people that have a hedge fund going, on power. And that's why Harvard is so powerful, because it's a hedge fund for Washington, D.C. They know that they can get people into Harvard. They can get them in there. It's not that they earn their way in there, that they're that smart. They get them into Harvard, and they know that those people can then come over into Washington, D.C. Harvard knows that they will push monies back to Harvard, and the government knows, or the people at the upper echelon of these political parties know that Harvard will push people towards them that are of a certain mold. So it's a hedge. It goes back and forth. They take care of each other. They pat each other on the back. They take care of each other. Where am I going with all this? When I looked at these stories today, what I saw was a bunch of people that nobody really knows. Like the other day when I was talking about Jeff Sessions, and some people got really upset because I was saying, joking about Jeff Sessions, but the fact is he doesn't do anything. And there's plenty of things that Jeff Sessions could be doing right now. He's not doing it. And I keep trying to tell people, you can't look at somebody just because they've been conservative for 30 years and think that they know everything, or they say everything that you will agree with, or that they're doing things in your best to your best benefit or to the country's benefit. That's typically not the case with people who follow a political ideology. I hope I'm making myself clear, because this is something very important for people on the left and the right to understand. You should forget about this left and right. So today when I was on David Webb's show, there was a story about, it was in The Hill, Australian diplomat whose tip prompted FBI's Russian probe has ties to the Clintons. And how does he have ties to the Clintons? Well, the Clintons have a thing called CHI for short, but it is the Clinton Health Access Initiative. And it's another Clinton nonprofit organization. Now, I never even knew about this one. And when you look at the long list of people and donors that literally give to this, it's phenomenal when you look at this and the levels of money that they give. Above $25 million. That's some of the donations that these people give. Above $25 million. Bill and Melinda Gates, Global Affairs Canada, IKEA Foundation, Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Australian Government, ELMA Foundation, UK Department for International Development, and Unit Aid. Now that's above $25 million. As we move down, I mean, almost everybody's in this where they're giving money to the Clintons. And the interesting thing about this particular person is that the money was initially, there was money that came from Australian government. The money was initially allocated to the Clinton Foundation, but later was routed through an affiliate of the charity known as, now remember, it's not just the Clinton Health Access Initiative. There's also affiliates of that. And what they found is that some of the money that went to the Clinton Global Initiative or the Clinton Foundation was being donated to CHI, which is the Clinton Health Access Initiative. And again, who gets paid out of all this? The Clintons and all their cronies. Now, there's a whole list of things that they say that they did good, like they gave medicine here, they gave medicine there. Some of the medicine was found to be expired. I have no doubt in my mind that some of the people that they were getting the monies from were probably constituents in Big Pharma. So they were basically pay to play. You know, you donate money, we'll make sure that your drugs get over there and get used. So this Australian was one of four foreign governments to donate more than $25 million to Chai, the records show. So they donated $25 million. 4 countries donated $25 million to this charitable fund. But this individual, this Australian, Downer, now the Australian's ambassador to London, provided the account of a conversation with Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos at a London bar in 2016 that became the official reason the FBI opened the Russian counterintelligence probe. But lawmakers, this is coming off the Hill, lawmakers say the FBI didn't tell Congress about Downer's prior connection to the Clinton Foundation. This is very, I wouldn't even say odd, folks. This is just very, very criminal. And I don't know how many of these different things we have to see of the same repetitive behavior. Just like I keep saying at the top of the federal government, you have Lois Lerner lost her emails. You have the FBI and the DOJ, people in there lost their emails, or they lost their text messages. None of this stuff is ever lost in the federal government. It doesn't disappear. Ask any lower level person who's not an executive that got in trouble. Their emails are always found. Always. If you accessed some database, it's going to be found out. So those people show a pattern of behavior over and over again that we know is criminal. We see that it's criminal. Strzok, for instance, I talked about him yesterday, from the FBI Deputy Assistant Director. Criminal behavior. James Comey, criminal behavior. Lois Lerner from the IRS, criminal behavior. The people at the top of the VA, criminal behavior. I mean, we've seen these things repeated over and over again, and we get basically a foundation, or not a foundation, but we get a baseline for this type of behavior. We know once that people like Lois Lerner and the Clintons, once they start to say that they have lost their emails, you know that they were not prepared for what's happening and they don't really have a defense. So they just say, we lost our emails, and they disappear. We now have that streamline, that baseline of behavior that we can measure now. When we see other people use the same excuse, we can look closely at the case and know they were not prepared for this. They don't have any type of scam they can do. And so they just say, I don't have my emails, or I plead the fifth. And then they just walk away. When we look the same way, when we look at the Clintons and we look at all these nonprofits, which, again, somebody just pointed this out a minute ago, that's a catch-22. It's the biggest lie that there is. It's not a nonprofit. People are making profit from this. People pay their rents, buy jets. They do all these things. So when we look at the Clintons and we look at their baseline of behavior and how they do things in not just one, but 2 nonprofits, and then we see a third nonprofit that I had never even heard of, what we're starting to see now is there's clear baseline of behavior that we can measure and say, this doesn't fit. This is an abnormal behavior, but it's streamlined all the way through. Just like when people say at the high position, say, I lost my emails, because that doesn't work at a lower position. Johnny says, how do we resolve the issue with the FBI? Oust the existing upper echelons and promote from the ranks. Yes, that's what I believe. David Webb asked me today, he goes, do you think in the DOJ, for instance, should we fire the people that we know at the top that are part of the deep state? Should we fire them or wait to find people to fill their vacancies? And quite frankly, whether it's the FBI or the DOJ or the CIA or the NSA, I say fire these people. The majority of people at the top of these agencies, they've actually served less in an operational capacity than the majority of people that have been in for 20 or 15 years, or some people even 10 years. They've done more cases on the ground level than people who are at the top of these deputy director roles, because they bounce. They go boom, 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 boom. And they rise to this high level. I would say get rid of them. Clean house, President Trump. Start with Jeff Sessions. Work your way through it. Get rid of all these people. Rod Rosenstein. Get rid of all the people that think that see, here's a great thing about Jeff Sessions, I will say. The people that work in the DOJ think he's a Manchurian candidate. They're fruitcakes. So at least you know that he's got them on the ropes a little bit. That's the one good thing I can say about it. But I would say get rid of him. Get rid of a lot of these people at the top. Go to do the same thing in the FBI. Get rid of all the deputy assistant directors. Promote from within, but look real carefully and find real operators that have worked real cases. And then I would do the same thing at the DOD, which I've talked about before. I would get rid of the majority of generals, and I would promote chiefs who've done amazing jobs, and I would promote them, hire some of these generals to stay on and show them budgets and things. Of course, their staff is probably knows more than the generals, but I'd get rid of those generals, man. We've never won a war since World War II, and I would get rid of them, and then I would completely throttle back on the Secretary of Defense. I don't really even know why we need. I mean, I know why they use a Secretary of Defense, but we don't really need a Secretary of Defense. The DOD should be able to work on its own and report to the president. Same thing with the FBI. Why do we need a political appointee there? Same thing with the DOJ. They should work. They should police themselves. And as far as the Inspector General goes, I don't trust any of those people either. They got this guy working this case. I don't trust the Inspector General. He don't get to that level unless he's political, and that's why we need to change the system. You don't get to those levels unless you've kicked ass and taken names as an operator. Then you get to the top, and then you're held to a task. You don't get bonuses. You don't get a preferential treatment because you're at a high rank. You're in the government. And if you want to make big bucks, go out and live in the civilian world and work at that same level out in the civilian world. They use this nonsense about giving $25,000 to $50,000 bonuses by saying that we should pay these people at the top so that they don't leave and go elsewhere. Hey, screw them. Let them go somewhere else. They obviously don't know how to run things in the government, so get rid of them. Promote people who are there because they swore an oath to the Constitution. Promote people who are there because they love the job. Promote people up there because they've worked and they know what they're doing. Forget about this nonsense. Get rid of them. And stop with these people like the Clintons, like the Paul Ryans, like all the rest of these people, the John McCains, who have been Jeff Sessions, these people who have been in politics for 30 or more years, who have basically been living off the government dole, and not like people that live over in the housing projects over here. They live off the government dole, but they're not getting richer. They're just scraping by, but they're comfortable with scraping by. These people in politics live off of the dole, and they become multi-millionaires. Multi-millionaires. They don't get in trouble for insider trading. They can run multiple nonprofits as scams. They can do all these things, and they just get richer. They don't do anything to do stuff that's effective for the country. I say get rid of them and make the Overwatch so stringent. If I could change three things in this country, these are what those three things would be. Everybody wants to talk about the Second Amendment, and they want to change this, and they want to do that. If we were going to change anything in this country, in the Constitution, it would be that every citizen must serve at least 2 years in the military in some way, shape, or form. I don't care if they never deploy and they just serve in National Guard and standing guard in schools. I don't care. We got 150 million adults in this country, 300 million people. But that would be a good way to steadily keep people going through. You put them in the military. They have to serve their 2 years. They can do it in National Guard, and they stand a post at the schools. I'd be perfectly fine with that. They stand posts at the airports. Why not have them at the schools? But that's the first thing. The second thing And Ed Hines, I agree with you. I don't want a draftee next to me in a firefight as well. But I do believe that everybody in this country should have to pick up arms and be prepared, and they should serve this country and pay for their citizenship. And I think if they wanted to do it in country, and if people want, look, if somebody was a draftee and they were going to go in anyway, see, that's the thing. Like in Israel, they don't call them draftees. They're, I don't know if they call them conscripts or whatever, but they serve. They know they're going to serve. And so people go in there, it's not that they're necessarily being drafted. Some of those people would be that way. But if you want to go on and serve in an infantry unit or in a combat unit, you have to go through all the training everybody else has. I don't think you should just take people who didn't want to be there and stick them in combat. I don't think that would work. But there are other things that they could do. The point being, that's the first thing. Make people understand firearms and make them understand service to the country. And we've gone so far where everybody expects, like from John F. Kennedy, which I used to think this was a great statement, but the more I think about it, I have a good friend who's a neurosurgeon who said that was the most ridiculous statement he's ever heard when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Now, it sounds good. It sounds good. But the fact is, neither one of them should be asking what the other one can do for them. They should be saying, he should have put it in a phrase of, don't ask what your country can do for you, and your country shouldn't be asking what you can do for it. Everybody should be serving because you are born free, and we should stand together and we should serve each other. Stop asking everybody else what they're going to do for you. Start doing for other people, serving other people. That's what John F. Kennedy should have said and clarified it. But we don't even have any type of mentality of service in this country. That's why only 1% of the people serve in the military. The other thing I would do is I would make people promoted in the federal government only through, they would have to have a checklist of things that they have to do operationally, and they have to have stood out. In other words, okay, so you check these boxes and you show that you know how to operate, but now go out and do it. And if you've done something great, you've done a great case, or in the military, you've led operations, or you've restructured something, you will be looked at for promotion. But you should only be, see, this is where the military gets it wrong, and the federal government. Let's say you work in, and I know of somebody who's is either general or admiral, and they were instrumental in creating the GPS program for the military, and that guy got promoted up to an 07. And then that's the type of people that will go sit on the Joint Chief of Staff planning wars, and they have no place in there. This guy never fought in infantry. He never fought in a combat unit. Why should he have any say-so? I don't like aircraft carrier captains who turned admiral because they were pilots and they led a fleet, and they were command of an aircraft carrier squadron, and and then they're in charge of dictating warfare on the ground. I don't agree with that. I don't like it. If you don't understand this position, you don't lead in that position. That's a problem that we have in this country. And then third is, if you rise to a higher level, you should be held to a higher standard. If you can't perform, and you screw up, then you get no chances. If you're up at that level, you should understand how to do your job. And I can't get this for the life of me, how it is that people who are brand new will get crucified, and people who have been in for 20 years or 30 years, like in the politicians or people in the federal government, and they get to these high elite ranks and they do crazy stuff that would get a civilian put in jail, and nothing happens to them. And they fail at all these things. They should be held to the highest. They should be walking on eggshells. Like my friend Dave, who used to, not this Dave Robinson, but another Dave, who used to be the silent guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. They can't even get a parking ticket when they are on there. And then afterwards, after they get out of it, even when they're not even in the military anymore, if they get a felony on their record, their name gets removed never to be seen again as part. Their whole record is stripped, that they were never a part of it. I think it's only happened once or twice. It should be, that's the way it should be. You get a position of high ranking in the federal government, people should be looking upon you as they expect you to be towing the line, because anything that you do that is nefarious or bad, you're gone. That just doesn't happen. They get promoted if they screw up. They get bonuses. Nobody else gets bonuses in the government. Anyway, if you did those three things, it'd be a whole lot different, but nobody's ever going to listen to what I have to say, so it doesn't really. The government's not going to change because the government's full of these people, and they do what they want. Let's go to the A block. Let's go to the A block, and I want to shift gears just a little bit. Not too much, though. I knew I was going to be sweating tonight because these are some big topics. Now, I don't know if I'm fully explaining a lot of these things. I'm trying my hardest to make these clear, and I want people to understand exactly. You know, if you're not clear on something, let me know, because I'm reading this stuff, and if you're not clear on it, I'll try to clarify it. Somebody put on Instagram today a video of these two Parkland High School activists, David Hogg, who we all know, and Cameron Caskey. Now, I'm going to say some things that, I mean, look, I think I've already gotten in trouble with one network for saying this, and they didn't like me saying that these kids are enemies of the state. In context, what I was saying, that they are a part of a group of people that are enemies of the state. But I think I'm being proved right every single day with these people. Now, a lot of people don't want, they don't want to talk about these kids. Just like Hollywood and mainstream media won't let you talk about pedophilia, which is very interesting because a friend of mine sent me this today. Hold on one second. Let me pull it up. Let me see here. Hold on. And I was shocked when I saw this because I hadn't read this before. Actually, I take that back. I'd seen part of it, but I hadn't read into it. Hold on a second here. Pull it up. So, and I want Facebook trolls that are working at Facebook to listen to this, because this goes right along with what I was talking about a second ago. You got to be very careful with what you get behind. And you should be questioning anybody who comes up with a stupid thing like this. Facebook says that it made a mistake, you think, after it asked users in a poll if it should allow child predators to ask children for sexual photos on its platform. Now, that really happened. The odd admission comes after Facebook prompted some of its users with a survey asking about acceptable behaviors on its platform. One survey question asked how a user would, quote unquote, handle a man asking for inappropriate pictures of a young girl if that user was in charge of setting Facebook's policies. There are a wide range of topics and behaviors that appear on Facebook. One question read, according to screenshots posted by The Guardian, quote, I think about an ideal world where you could set Facebook's policies. How would you handle the following? A private message in which an adult man asks a 14-year-old girl for sexual pictures, unquote. Users were then given a standard set of answers to pick from, ranging from this content should not be allowed on Facebook and no one should be able to see it, to this content should be allowed and Facebook and I would not mind seeing it. On Facebook and I would not mind seeing it. A follow-up question in the survey asked users who should be in charge of deciding policies around, quote, an adult male asks a 14-year-old girl for sexual pictures, unquote, and gave the option for letting, quote, Facebook users decide the rules by voting. Now, Facebook's vice president of product, Guy Rosen, tweeted that the company had made an error and that these kinds of actions would always be completely unacceptable on a social platform. We run surveys, he says, to understand how the community thinks about how we set policies, but this kind of activity is and will always be completely unacceptable on Facebook. We regularly work with authorities if identified. It should have been part of this survey that was, it shouldn't have been a part of this survey that was a mistake. Now, mistakes don't happen at Facebook, not like this. So this was not a mistake. I don't know what the true intentions were of Facebook in doing this. Just like I don't know what Milo's true intentions were, and those of you that follow Milo, I would strongly suggest that you do not follow Milo and put him on a pedestal of conservative authority or whatever you want to call it, a picture of, the gay conservative. Forget about that, whether he's gay or straight. The words that come out of his mouth when he's talking about it's acceptable in the gay community for young boys to have sexual relationships with older men because it's like a mentorship is basically what he was saying. I don't know, he backpedaled on this and people just forgot it. Well, what was he really saying there? Was he literally trying to open people up to the way that his lifestyle and what he was introduced to, and so that people will just kind of get indoctrinated into it and kind of relax about it? Is that what Facebook was trying to do here? Again, you cannot just follow blindly. And when I come on and I talk about, following the Parkland school shooting, how these young adults, they're all 17, how they showed no remorse, no mourning, and so quickly came out and started talking about the Second Amendment, which they clearly don't know anything about, when they started talking about the AR-15 in particular, and trying to make people believe that they were only trying to get, mental people where they couldn't buy these things quickly or couldn't have them. It's nonsense because they have gone past that already. Talking about the NRA as being baby killers. Well, I know, there's 5 million Americans that belong to the NRA that are law-abiding citizens. They don't go around killing babies. The majority of those people do not belong to anything except for a gang or a psychotic break. So when I saw Bill Maher, somebody put this on Instagram, and I saw just a clip of it, and that's the part of the interview. I'm not going to play the whole interview for you because I'm not going to promote these two young adults, and I'm saying that nicely. I'm not going to say exactly how I feel because I have to be somewhat guarded, just like with Pizzagate and Seth Rich and all these things. The media, Facebook, Twitter, they will go after you and they will shut down your ability to reason when it comes to this stuff. So I have to be very careful here. I know what's going on, but I'm still going to bring it up, which nobody else is bringing up. I want you to listen to what these two young adults, David Hogg, it's really mostly Cameron Kasky and his big mouth talking. Let me pull this up here. Now remember, folks, it's only been 3 weeks since 17 people were killed, many more injured for life, and these two individuals were right there, immediately jumping on board.
No, look, a lot of people are trying to take us down quickly. They're trying to discredit us. They're trying to say, we don't know what we're talking about. Well, until you've been on the receiving end of...
Some of them have called you actors.
Well, I am an actor, actually. I'm in Spring Awakening right now at the Parkland Performing Arts Center. It's a great show.
I don't find that funny at all. There's no humility in this kid. It's complete ego, and... no remorse, no mourning. Now, he's going to make it sound like he's an expert because he was in the classroom, but I got something to say about that as well.
What I'm saying is, you could say that we don't know what we're talking about because we're 17 years old, but until you've been on the receiving end of an AR-15, until you've been locked into your class. Look, Wayne LaPierre, Dana Loesch.
Right.
I don't know.
See, he's not, this is a kid, right? An adult kid. He's going to be 18 here pretty soon. He's going to graduate high school. He's going to be in the workforce. What he is saying and what he's about to say is because he was in a shooting, he is an expert. That the NRA and Dana Loesch, and let me tell you, I'd love to look at Dana Loesch a lot longer than you little brat. Dana Loesch and the NRA, he's trying to make it sound like they don't know what they're talking about or they have an agenda. But the fact is, just because you were in a shooting doesn't make you an expert in how to stop the shooting. That would be like saying that somebody who lives in Oklahoma and they just moved to Oklahoma and they didn't realize that there's tornadoes that come through every year and their house gets swept away by a tornado. My friend Greg Bradley had his house swept away in Lone Oak, Arkansas. Greg is an expert on car sales. He is not an expert on tornadoes. I'm sure he knows how to react now, but he doesn't know how to stop a tornado any more than the weather people know how. John McCain was tortured in Vietnam, but John McCain is not the person that I want to turn to when it comes to interrogation techniques and advanced interrogation techniques and what's effective, because he was a victim. He's seen what happens to people when they're, if anything, they should interview him saying, what point did you break? But he was tortured. So he shouldn't have any say-so. He should have never been a part of that conversation. These two young adults, they do not know. They do not have the experience. They do not understand the reality of stopping somebody before they get into the school. That is clearly evident because they never mention any of that stuff. They, quite frankly, don't have the training or the expertise to come up with a proper evaluation. They could be taught this stuff. I'm not saying I'm any genius because I know it. There's lots of things that I don't know how to operate on a brain. I'm not going to tell my friend Wally Grand if I have to have brain surgery that I know more than he does now because I had brain surgery. Wally Grand is a world-class brain surgeon, neurosurgeon. Well, let's listen.
I don't know if you guys have ever had to deal with that, but as far as I know, that's not the case. We've been locked in a classroom. We have seen our friends text their parents goodbye. We are the experts. We know exactly what we're talking about. How dare you tell us we don't know what we're...
I'm friend. Yeah, friends. And let's take the...
I mean, what the...
Dare you tell us we don't know what we're...
I'm friend. Yeah.
This kid is so much of a player that he can't stop himself. So I'm here to tell you, whatever your name is there, I forgot what his name is. Cameron Caskey. The only thing you're an expert on is talking about fear. That's what you're an expert of. Fear when you're not prepared in how to deal with a situation like an active shooter. I will tell you, you have more experience than I do when it comes to, well, I can't quite say that you do that either because I've been in situations that he will never be in that's quite frankly, very terrifying. But these students do have an expertise in something that nobody's really talking about, which they could be going around the country talking about. If you get yourself in a situation that you are frozen by fear, this is how you prepare your mind. This is what I wish I would have done. This is how I wish I would have trained myself. That's not what they're doing. He's saying because they were in the classroom that they are experts in everything that has to do with the Second Amendment, with how to stop active shooters, with nonsense. Nonsense. I don't even know if these kids have ever shot a gun, but listen what else he says here.
And let's take that again. Yeah. Cameron, scene two.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. What I'm asking is, like, in 6 months, say, if you haven't gotten the change you wanted, you're going to graduate high school at some point,
hopefully.
Right?
Yeah, I might not.
Would you see doing this as a career, blowing off college? Because honestly, guys, college is a bunch of bullshit. Kidding, kids, kidding. It's great. Yeah, college. You probably, you know, would learn more, or just as much, you know. I mean, you already have this great platform.
We'd certainly learn more than our politicians are willing to take action on.
Well, I do think you're going to get something done. I really do. I mean, we have never quite seen change like this, or at least people receptive to it.
And I think part of the reason for that.
What? Okay, Bill Maher, he understands the reality of the threat from Islam in this country. But I don't understand how he got that, because he is so far gone on everything else, which is typical of a drugged-up atheist. That's typically the way that somebody who's on coke all the time will think. So let's just finish with that. I'm speechless listening to this nonsense.
We've kept reminding people that this isn't about us, this isn't about Democrats or Republicans, this is about Americans and those 17 individuals that lost their lives that day. That's what this really should be about.
That is a talking point. That is a narrative right there that he's been told to say, and the reality is this isn't about Americans, this is about the left. All right? It's not about Americans, it's not about saving lives, this is about taking guns away from the country. Now, I don't want to be considered one of these, right-wing, whatever you want to call these people. I'm not that. I'm an effective thinker. All right, I understand the Constitution. I understand the Second Amendment. I understand securing your schools. I have a degree in psychology. I understand the mental health system and how it's broken. And there's nobody talking about that. No one. And for these two to be paraded all over the place, along with that other Gonzalez girl, and nobody can speak out about it, or else you're shunned as though you are a bad person that is talking bad about victims of a shooting. Look, I'm not talking about the fact that they were victims of a shooting. I'm talking about the fact that they are going out and spreading propaganda, and it is not something that they came up with. This is something that is highly coordinated. They are saying the exact same words as Sheriff Idiot Israel down there. They're saying the same exact stuff as people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all the activist parents and the politicians. They're saying the exact same rhetoric, the exact same lines, and they're doing it in a coordinated fashion.
Yeah.
We're not targeting people's guns. My father
Yes, you are.
My father's a police officer. His father's former FBI. We have guns in our houses. We're not trying to tear apart the Second Amendment. We are just kids begging for our lives, getting murdered in our classrooms.
But honestly, I think that's part of the
Unbelievable.
problem in this country is that nobody goes at the Second Amendment. Nothing is really going to change unless somebody talks about that. The reason why this country is different is because we treat guns as a right. Other countries treat it as a privilege. And every debate begins with even...
And that's why America was the country that broke away from kings and queens and ended slavery. If it wasn't for the United States, slavery would still be intact. If it wasn't for the United States, people would still be ruled by monarchies. Now, in Great Britain, they still have a monarchy, but by and large, they're ruled by their government more than anything, although they're still intertwined there. But this knucklehead fully does not understand the Second Amendment because he was born here, he was born free, and he doesn't understand the reality of history. And people like this who go around gallivanting as though they are, and he speaks like he knows all this stuff, and he's like socially elevated, and yet he's on coke. I know that for a fact because I know people who party at the Playboy Mansion with him. I know that he's a freaking narcissist because you could look at how he lives his life and the way he interprets things. He doesn't care whether people hate him or love him. Classic signs of a narcissist. And he doesn't know history. If he knew history, he would be as adamant about the Second Amendment as he is about the danger of the Muslim population and the cancer that flows in that, the fundamentalist, jihadist cancer. But he's not. And that's what he just clearly does not get that. And I implore the people who consider themselves liberal, who might be watching this show, and it's really interesting, there's no response from anybody on Twitter tonight. I don't know, maybe that's just my Twitter thing, I don't know. But it's very interesting that one second here. It's very interesting that people that rail against the Second Amendment have no understanding that every country in the history of mankind, up until when the United States was born, would succumb to nefarious kings and queens and dictators. It is the same. It will always be the same unless the citizenry is empowered with something like the Second Amendment, which allows them to be armed. The government is scared of us. Do you understand that? And it's good. It's good that they're scared of us. Look, if you don't think it's possible, and I'm saying this to liberals out there because I know conservatives feel this way. If you don't think this is possible, look at what is happening right now in the FBI and the DOJ. Look at what has happened with politics over the past election. Now, there's no way that you can tell me if you were liberal that you were okay with the way the Democrats were acting or the Republicans were acting. It was all bad. Look at media. Look at how ingrained media is with politics. It's dangerous. Look at the way big money donors that don't even live here are involved in shaping our politics, our laws. If you don't think that this country could be, if we didn't have the Second Amendment, if they weren't scared of the citizenry in the uprising, if you don't think that existed, that fear, that everything would be okay, you're sadly mistaken. Because these people that live in this power vacuum are just waiting for the opportunity. And I read another article. I've been saying this about Texas. Now they're saying a record number. It's the highest number of Democratic candidates in Texas history are going to be running in 2018. Ted Cruz is under a real challenge. And the Democrats typically come out and vote more than the Republicans do, the conservatives, in the entire United States. So Texas is in bad shape. And if you live in Texas, you guys should be having some major rallies right now because it's not good. I don't know. I can't stomach much more of this. Let's watch a few more seconds of it.
Even the liberal side, just bowing down to the Second Amendment. And I don't know if that's the right approach.
The Second Amendment is a very, very good piece of rhetoric defense.
Please, please, Cameron, school us on the Second Amendment, please. Let me start this over.
Very good piece of rhetoric defense that I've seen a lot because...
Rhetoric defense. This kid did not come up with that on his own. The Second Amendment is a good piece of rhetoric defense. That's what this guy is saying.
They put it as if we're attacking a right that you're born with. And at the end of the day...
You are?
A 19-year-old...
But it is, if you're an American.
If you're an American. A 19-year-old bought a weapon that you don't need to keep robbers...
So Bill Maher even got that right.
...and bears out of your house. And if that kid had seen a professional for 5 minutes, they wouldn't have said you need a gun. They would have said you need a counselor. And that was just allowed to happen.
Okay.
He's all over the place.
So one of your classmates, I think her name was Samantha, and Trump called her, and the first thing he said to her was, "I heard you're a big fan." And
that sounds about right. I didn't even know about that, but that sounds about right.
You know who I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, and she said, "I was never so unimpressed with someone in my life."
Yeah, I actually hung up on the White House the other day.
You hung up on the White House?
Yeah, because they called us the day before.
Surprised you got through.
Well, no, they called me. And they actually called me the day before the listening session and asked if we were going to come. And I said, I'm not coming because we expect President Trump to come to the CNN town hall, which he never declined the invitation from. And the fact that they called us the day before, I found very offensive, considering the fact that there were funerals the next day. There was mourning we still had to do. And I ended on this message with them. I said, President Trump, we don't need to listen to President Trump. President Trump needs to listen to the screams of the children and the screams of this nation.
Well, listen, I want you to know something about President Trump, because you haven't been around long enough to see a lot of presidents. Who's the first one you remember, Bush?
I was at my first Obama rally when I was 7 years old.
7 years.
All right, that's about enough. That's all we need to hear. It's freaking... Good Lord. Why should I not be able to defend the Second Amendment against this tactic of using 17-year-olds and playing them off as though they're children, playing them off as though they're victims, when the fact is, okay, they were in the school. Whatever. They show no remorse. Therefore, I'm only going to be so limited in the way that I stand against them. Secondly, they are taught exactly what they should be saying, and they're falling the exact same rhetoric, the exact same narrative as everybody else that is, this Scott Israel, a sheriff down there. You got all these other politicians, all these activists are saying the same exact stuff. They're highly trained in what to say. They chose two people that are actors. I'm not talking about crisis actors. Definitely actors. He admits he's an actor, that guy, that kid Cameron. This is a tactic being used by the left. It's been used before. It's no different than when Saddam Hussein or any of these other people use women and babies as shields, as human shields. They put them in front of their fighters, and they shoot from behind them. It's no different. They're going to put these young people out there that have been highly trained. Their parents are activists. The one kid, David Hogg, his dad was an FBI agent. He hates Trump. He's an activist. They're going to put them out there, and then they know, because the media works so closely with them, that if you say anything about them, then they're going to try to crucify you for it. And I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to play the game, because I'm not going to go out and call them all these names and say all these things about them. The fact is, it's fair game. When they want to step out and they want to go against the Constitution, and they want to talk about screaming children, this and that, and use this rhetoric calling the NRA baby killers, calling the Second Amendment rhetoric, talking about how as though it's a, I don't even know exactly what he just said, but he doesn't even realize that it is a right that we are given from birth. If they want to step into that playing field and the left wants to use them, then it's fair game. It is fair game. And I don't think we should have to back off. In fact, I would invite both of those young people to come on to this show, and let's have I'll bring one other person on with me, maybe Andrew Wilkow if he'd ever come on, and we will discuss the Second Amendment, or Ron Bellin. Ron Bellin would be a great guy. And let's see how much they know about the Second Amendment. Let's see if what they're talking about, since this kid thinks he's an expert because he was in a room where shooting occurred, that he's going to know the reality of how to secure a school, how to stop people from being killed. Look, you don't want to hear any more screaming kids dying. Secure our freaking schools. Fix the mental health issue. That's a start. Do site surveys and threat assessments on every school in the United States. Give them something like my book so that they can go out there and do the threat assessments themselves. Do something. But people want to follow along with this. They're not seeing the tactics as being used, and they are being led astray. You got to be smarter than this, folks. I don't care if you're left or right. You got to be smarter than this. All right, let's move to the, I got to look at what I wrote. I forgot. I got so wound up in this. Forgot. Okay. One last thing I want to talk about before we go. Let's go to the B block. All right. The last thing I was saying on this, I'm going to break from this a little bit, but it's kind of right along the lines here. There are consequences to everything that you do. You don't like the Second Amendment. I'm going to ask you, why do you not like the Second Amendment? You're going to say, if you're a leftist, you're going to say, or if you're a liberal, you're going to say, well, I don't think that that people should have those powerful weapons. And I say, well, what about a rifle to go shooting with, to go hunting with, or to keep in your house to keep you safe? Okay, well, I'll agree with that. Well, do you realize that it's the same gun? It's just that one has a wood stock to it, and the other one has a collapsible butt stock and plastic foregrip. I mean, do you realize? Well, it's got that magazine, that holds 30 rounds. But do you realize with a shotgun, that you can load a certain amount of rounds in different shotguns. It's different amount of rounds, but it takes about, I don't know, if you're really fast, like my friend Marcus, who's a left-handed, one of the Satan spawn, the left-handed people in this world, he can flip that shotgun to the side and load that thing literally as fast as I can load an AR-15. Reload it. It's sick watching this guy when he's going. You probably wouldn't know that. Do you realize in close proximity that I could take a .45 caliber pistol and do as much human damage up close in a classroom as I could with an AR-15? Yes, it's possible, not because of my training, but because the power of the weapon. You can't believe everything that you're told because of an ideology. You can't say, well, yeah, I support the troops, but I don't support the war. Well, I mean, look, just say it. I hate this war. It's a political war. Don't just say what everybody else is saying. Thank you for your service. But yet you go off and you talk about how bad the war is. Why not sit down and have a conversation with everybody and say, why are we in this war and nothing's being fixed? Why are we putting our troops in harm's way when we're not stopping terrorism? We're not stopping the war on drugs. That's a conversation I want to have, but not saying, you're going to stand up there and wear a pink hat and talk nonsense when you have no understanding. So I'm going to end it with this. If you do stupid stuff, you're going to have, there's consequences. You do stupid things, you're going to get hurt. If you follow a narrative, you're going to get hurt. If you don't do your research on history, you're going to be led astray. You're going to get hurt. Stupid isn't just something that somebody does on a dare or because they weren't paying attention and they walk into a door when they're looking at their phone. Stupid is giving away your constitutional rights because you didn't understand them fully. What I was trying to say earlier about the guns is people will say, they'll follow the rhetoric and say, oh, I don't want to take away all the guns. Well, that's not true. Because once somebody goes in and we took away all the AR-15s and somebody goes in with a pistol and does the same amount of damage, Klebold Harris in Columbine, they didn't use an AR-15. They used a shotgun and one other gun that they hardly used at all. Most of the killing was done with a shotgun in Columbine. And they also planted bombs that didn't go off, thank goodness. We haven't even talked about that. You take one bomb into a classroom, if it's made correctly, kill everybody in there. But the point I'm trying to say here is I'm not trying to tell people how to kill. I'm trying to say that you cannot say and rightfully think in your brain that if we get rid of this one gun that all school killings will stop. It's not going to happen. And if you're stupid enough to follow that ideology, it is a stupid thing. You are not thinking it through, and you are just populating the internet and the social media sites and all over media. You are responsible for helping perpetuate that lie that is going to get more people killed. You should be putting up memes saying that we refuse to let anybody go to school anymore until we do a threat assessment on the school and we lock this place down. Why aren't we seeing memes of that? We're not. Why isn't Hollywood screaming about that? They're not. Why isn't George Clooney and these people donating money to buy metal detectors? They're not. They want to do something. Let's get a voluntary force of former military veterans or former cops and military veterans in a combat-related field. How about George Clooney goes out and buys $500,000 worth of ammunition for these people to fill their guns because they're volunteering to stand a watch and put their bodies in harm's way? How about that? Nobody's going to do that. They just want to take away AR-15s, and many of them want to just do away with the Second Amendment. So I want to look at this on a more simple scale for you simple-minded people. Rugby player, this comes off of FoxNews.com. A rugby player who swallowed a garden slug as a dare is fighting the Australian government over health bills. Now, I am fascinated by this, and it's a terrible story. This guy... Let me just pull this up. He was a strapping young man. It was a good-looking kid and a rugby player and evidently a pretty big kid. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. This is what he looked like. And he was a good-looking kid. He goes and, on a dare, picks up a slug. A slug like this, not big. I don't know whose toe that is, or a finger. He picked up a slug, and he ate the slug. As it turns out, this slug had a worm in it that is found in rodents. Snails and slugs can get them when they eat their poop. And what happened was, I guess I should say feces. That's the scientific word. So what happens is they get infected with a disease. And in this case, it rarely causes, according to this story, it rarely causes symptoms, but in rare cases it can cause an infection in the brain, and that's what happened. He contracted something. But he didn't recover from it. I'm reading what this says right here.
Eosinophilic meningoencephalitis.
Yeah, there you go.
Eosinophilic meningoencephalitis.
I got it fixed where it'll read it for me. So he gets this brain disease. He doesn't recover from it. He lapses into a coma for 420 days and becomes a quadriplegic. All because of a dare. And I felt like, I'm not calling this guy stupid by any means. Like I remember eating frog eggs one time. Jake Zwig, my good buddy Jake Zwig, who, you know, didn't make any friends in the SEAL teams, that's for sure. But you may have seen him on Dude, You're Screwed. Jake is a force to be reckoned with. But we were in training one time, and a mouse ran by, and he grabbed it, and everybody was like, eat it. So he just stuck the thing in his mouth and ate it alive. I mean, he could have had the same thing. If we do stupid things, there's a consequence to it. Sadly for this guy, the consequence of his mistake is going to last the rest of his life. And our prayers go to him. But it's an example. It's an in-your-face example of what happens when you don't understand exactly what you're doing. If you let go of the Second Amendment, if you turn your back on the Constitution, if you listen and you say, you can't say anything bad about these young children because they were in this school in Florida, you're being played. These people are being coached in what to say. They're a part of a bigger group of people that are trying to destroy the Constitution in this country. That's not a conspiracy theory at all. It's systematically being done around the world, actually, not just our Constitution, but around the world. I talked to many people at SHOT Show from Australia. They said the same thing. I talked to people from Canada. They said the same thing. From Great Britain, they said the same thing. They've come in. These globalists have come in. They've obtained positions of elite leadership in the government, and they have crushed any type of gun ownership or anything. Look what France. There's no guns in France. That didn't stop the terrorists, now did it? Embezzling when they killed all those people. How many attacks has France had, one after another? Nobody can defend themselves at all. As opposed to Israel, where everybody has guns, and their terrorist attacks end because the civilians typically take them out. So, if you do stupid things, there's going to be a consequence. And not understanding what's going on and how you're being played is stupid. This kid, when he ate that slug, he didn't expect that to happen. Now, here's another thing I just want to point out. The stuff that you see the government doing a lot of times is misguided. We have all this security at the airport that you got to stand in line for, take your shoes off for, get x-rayed. We don't even know what the outcome of that's going to be. Yet they don't set up rings of security in the airport. Basically, you get off the edge. Right now, a terrorist could go down with a car bomb and wait. They could literally watch a 747 land. All they got to do is go online. They can find out where these planes are landing. And they can go in, and as the people come to get their luggage, there's going to be 300 people right there. They just pull up on the curve and blow up a bomb and kill all 300 people. It could be easily done because there's no rings of security. They just simply, because politicians were the ones responsible for planning the security or okaying it, they just put security up there where, you got to take your shoes off and make sure you don't have any liquids going in there. And I get it. That's a part of it. But this should be rings of security that doesn't exist. One of those rings is when people fly from other countries, like Ecuador, where two individuals fell to their death when they were landing on their way to the United States, but they landed in another place. And this happens a lot. These two individuals, 25 and 30-year-old males, had gotten up into the wheel well of the plane, and then what happens is they either freeze to death, or when the plane's gear opens, they fall and they die. And why am I bringing that up? Because if you trust that your government is not pulled and prodded by special interests, and that you think that they're just going to fix everything, you're stupid. It's stupid to believe that way. This is a huge hole in our security. How could that be fixed? No American plane that is going to come to the United States from another country can take off without being searched properly, or it has to be quarantined like the Israelis do with their planes. They don't do any of this stuff. I mean, look, that may not be the only answer, but there's answers. I don't care if the answer is to take off with your landing gear down and jostle the plane back and forth, try to get people to fall out. Whatever you got to do, because what if those people had a bomb and they crawled up in that wheel well and the plane took off? They didn't die until they fell out of the plane. And even if they did die, if they get up in there and put a bomb in there, they can blow the plane right out of the sky. Not by accessing through the terminal, but by going over the fence and going up into the wheel well of the plane. So the point is, don't be stupid. Stop following narratives. Start looking for solutions. Stop believing what you're told on television by the government is exactly the way it should be, because it's often not. Don't believe just because children, the quote-unquote children, but are really 17 years old, up until just recently in time, my grandparents, 15 was considered an adult. Now they're saying 21 is evidently, you're too young, according to Geraldo Rivera. 18 is just too young to do anything responsible. You shouldn't be able to drink. You shouldn't be able to have a gun. What are you going to take away their driver's license too? Are they that stupid? At 14... Well, at 6, I was driving a car. I'd already shot a gun at 5. I was hauling hay, driving a flatbed truck, and flying up and down dirt roads by the age of like 9 years old in a car. At 14, I was working while I'm in school. Well, actually, before that, 12, I was mowing lawns. At 14, I was working as a prep cook at a restaurant called Gaston's in Arkansas. All through high school, I worked 1 to 3 jobs. You can be an adult and be 17 years old. But we're believing the lie that you can't be. You got to be so old, and you got to be able to you have to graduate school before you're an adult. That's baloney. That's a lie. These young adults that we see being used and paraded in front of us on television and used as pawns to say whatever they want, and we can't say anything about them, is stupid, and I'm not going to fall for it, and you shouldn't either. I think that's about it. Let's go to the Truth Zone, and let's finish this up. I have not been able to read your stuff on Twitter, and I apologize for that. I'm going to I'll go back through I'm eager to see what you guys thought about this show today. So let's go back and let's go to the Truth Zone. I'll go back through later and read all your tweets and stuff. Yeah. It's funny, shows like this, I feel like the entire thing has been like a Truth Zone. Well, we got a big snow coming tomorrow. Actually, it starts tonight. Supposedly at like 1 o'clock. I know it's going to be somewhat bad because little Rico has been practically paralyzed today. Whenever a big storm is about to come, he can barely walk. He's been a good dog tonight, though. He's been sleeping. So, let me just say a few things here in closing. I have faith in the American people. But at the same time, I don't know if I have faith in the American people. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I believe that we have the capability to be amazing. I believe that we have the ability in this country to follow in the footsteps of our founding fathers and do amazing things. I don't think that you have to have an IQ of over 160 to be just an amazing person and do amazing things. I think you can be a hardworking individual with little education and do great things for a lot of people. I know that you can be somebody who is meek and quiet and say few things. You know, the Gettysburg Address by Lincoln, I was reading this today, it was like 200 words long. It was one of the most profound speeches of all time. But yet we have to have people, we think that you must say a lot. We think that you have to say and act out and say a lot. But it's not true. We had a caller on David Webb's show today. He calls in every time I'm on there. His name's Sean. He's a liberal from California. He always comes on and says, I got 3 points I want to make, and I want as much time as everybody else. Don't make demands of me. I tried to make it clear to the guy. Say less. Make your point. And be profound in what you say. But you cannot do that if you're living a life where you follow without questioning, where you are led without studying the history of where you're going and why things are the way that they are. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I have a tenacity in me that I need not to quit, that will always get me through the hard times. I thrive on doing things that everybody else says it's too hard to do. I don't know. That's just the way that I am. I'm not a genius, but I'm somebody who has consistently strove throughout his life to see the big picture and to see history and to understand the motivations of people. And you know what? I'm rarely surprised. And I'm almost always right. And it's not because I'm any smarter than anyone else. It's because I'm slow to making the decision. I don't speak if I don't know about it. And when I do, it's going to be very hard to stop me. That's the way Americans should be. I'm Jonathan Gillum. My good buddy Rico is right there next to me. This is The Experts. And remember, wherever you see this face or hear this voice, I don't care whether you like me or not, but just know this, the truth has arrived. I'll see you tomorrow. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.